Well, hey there, hi there, ho
We're
there.
live.
Oh my gosh, this is funny. So, when you're brand new in this business, one of the things you're most nervous about is going out and actually having to talk to people face to face. And over time, that gets easier, gets a lot more fun. It becomes a little more systematic, you know. And then you get old like me, and all of a sudden, you're supposed to talk about things you know in front of other people in a camera, and now you get nervous for different reasons. So this is short, but this is a version of a seminar kind of program thing we did years ago for my Rotary group, and we kind of reprised it a little bit for Rotaract with Corey a while back.
Which was fabulous. It was one of our most liked things we did all year.
Well, that's very nice of you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's all random stuff. It is based off of, we all have weird books that have made an impact on us for some reason or other. I don't know how you pronounce her last name, Leah Lowndes, Talking the Winner's Way. Full of these little vignettes, just weird, quirky ways of approaching different interactions in business, whether it's the written or verbal communication you have with clients or friends. I think, well, I got this in college, and
So it's pretty old.
it's very old, yeah. It's on like its 38th printing. The first one was on a stone tablet. But it's one of those that it's a fun read, it's fast, and you pick up little pieces out of it that you're like, oh, I can totally use that. I will loan this to anybody.
Okay.
It's a fun one. So what I do is I say we call this How to Work a Room Like a Politician. And I say that because I am a political junkie. I have done all sorts of fun stuff with political candidates over the years, and I've learned a lot, watched them, picked up on some things that are very applicable to business, especially anybody in a sales business. And this stuff kind of morphs into our world a little bit. The idea with how to work a room like a politician means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and I know everyone has something very specific they want to say about politicians in general. But just think for a minute about a politician. I mean, they're there, they're on a short time frame, they're doing multiple events all the time. I go to Olympia for the Hill Day Conference every year, and our state representatives are doing 4 or 5 receptions / dinners events every night after they're done with work, before they can go home and try to get some sleep before the next day starts again. And the key that I've always noticed is that they just simply appear, they process, and then they disappear. And what I mean by that is they appear, they don't just show up at the very beginning of any event. They wait till people are there, they make an entrance, they kind of get their sense of the room, the lay of the land. They figure out, because they've already thought about the event, where they're going, who they're going to be seeing, as far as the organization that's throwing the event, to where they're able to, hey Jay, they're able to do their homework in advance. So when I say they appear, they collect and process, and then they disappear. They're there on a mission. They're there for a reason. We're doing the same thing whenever we're networking. We're actually sometimes really, really lax about it though. And then the key is they ghost. They just simply, all of a sudden they're gone, and you don't notice. They're not the ones standing in the buffet line at the bitter end of the evening when everyone's trying to clean up. You know, they are out of there because they're there for a purpose, and they're there for a reason. And we should be as calculating, it sounds awful, but it's not. We should be as calculating and purposeful about those events as they are.
Intentional.
Yeah,
being
it's
intentional.
very
Yeah.
intentional, and it's all about figuring out how we can help people, how we can contribute to our business and to their life, and if nothing else, you're making relationships and you're building your sphere. So I look at that, and this comes up as a class because so much of what goes on in the real estate world now, as far as prospecting, is all social. People have their Instagram or Facebook or whatever pages they're using to try to get a sphere of influence built up. And that's a critical component of our business. However, we are still a face-to-face business. We have to be able to communicate with each other. We have to be able to get awkwardly uncomfortable to talk about things like finances with each other, and we have to be able to break down barriers and make people feel like they can talk to you and trust you on pretty intimate subjects. Not that social isn't important, because I do believe that that's where so much of this starts. It's just that at some point in time when you're morphing over, you have to be able to do it. And oftentimes, I will tell you, it's not just our own neuroses that are the problem. We live and work with tons of people who did not grow up in families where networking was part of a way of life. Introducing each other when you come into a room or when you meet people is not always common. Some of us think, well, that's just the way it should be. Oh, my mama told me you should extend your hand and look them in the eye and shake their hand and blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
So many people they didn't ever get that growing up. They don't know that. So they're as afraid of these situations as you are. And if you can diffuse that fear for people by just simply being kind of relaxed and in some way, shape, or form conversational with them, you're gonna break down barriers so fast. And I tell you, especially with the introverts, if you can break that down, they will love you for life, because that is such a big fear. There aren't that many introverts in our industry, so I'm speaking to the A-type personalities, but when you're out and about, you have to be very cognizant of that. I go back to this, I'm thinking in terms of the face-to-face networking event. You're creating a first impression there with somebody face-to-face. And true caveat, I'm not nearly as disciplined about any of this as I should be. I like doing it, I feel like I get by doing it, but I'm not as intentional as I could be with some of my homework too. So I'm not saying I'm perfect at any of this. But, you know, we're able to make a first impression on social pretty easy, because you only post the pretty pictures. You know, you only talk about the good things, or you're a drama queen and then no one wants to work with you. Not looking at you.
I was gonna say,
Everybody
that's
wanted
harsh.
No.
Or we
Teasing.
only
talk about
Totally
the
teasing.
good stuff, right?
What are we looking at?
It's easy, right? On social, it's like all the fun stuff, everything that's interesting and cool.
Everything's roses.
When you're all of a sudden standing there trying to talk about the weather, it can be awkward. I mean, it can get really weird really fast when you're just locked in and there's nothing else to say, right? So there are tips and tricks that we have to learn to navigate those experiences so that we're able to get the information we need, to process the information, and to get out. So we disappear and go home to our families at night. First things first, if you know you're going to be at an event like this, whether it's an industry event, say it's a Realtors Association event, or it's a networking thing with the Chamber of Commerce or any other group out there, do your homework. Think about where you're going. Think about what kind of event this is, as far as if there is a conversation on the table. If it's the chamber and there's a big event going on in local city politics, you know, kind of think about that, look into it. You could use their own newsletters, they're always online. You can research all that stuff. You can use the local newspaper. You can do so much background research before you go into those events. It doesn't take that long, but whenever you're there, if somebody is saying something like, well, I cannot believe that, you know, the city council just voted last night that they aren't going to put the strong mayor on the ballot. I mean, you're gonna have to go raise those signatures yourself. That's a huge topic for certain people in town. And if you're at their event, you better be able to keep up with the conversation. If you don't know what they're talking about, you've lost credibility. They're no longer even going to consider you. They might think it's great that you're at their event, hope we see you next month, but it doesn't mean you're ever going to break into their world and get their potential business down the road. So think about where you're going, look into it from that perspective. One of the things I talked about with the Rotaract group is, if you're planning on going to something that you really don't know anyone where you're going into the lion's den, so to speak, you know, use the buddy system. If you know full well that Antonio goes to this event all the time and you really want to go and he says, come with me, make sure you're connected with him in advance so that you're there together, kind of aware of what's going on. But don't be married to him throughout the evening, because you want to work the room, you want to talk to people, you want to be able to break the end, you want to divorce the guy at some point in time so you can make your own connections. And he needs to do the same thing, right?
At the exit.
But there's a buddy system, there's a support system there that you can work off of, and that actually helps everybody in the process. If that isn't possible, if you don't have anyone there, think about the person who maybe invited you, or the person who is maybe in some way, shape, or form in leadership, is connected to the group, and just be aware of the fact that they're unwittingly, they're your key contact. They're the person that you need to connect with when you're there, so that they see you and hear you and know that you're there, so they remember that you took the time to show up. And you can ask them easily very disarming questions. You can just simply say, this is so cool. I've never been to the Chamber of Commerce monthly meeting before. I don't really know anybody here. Who do I need to know? Who do I need to connect with? People will flock to help you. It is amazing the way people, especially because they're there because they love this organization and they're happy that someone new is there. They will go out of their way to connect you. Again, they might not be married to you the entire evening or the entire meeting, but they're going to put you in touch with a couple of people where you can make connection, you can have a conversation, hopefully trade business cards, do all that kind of stuff, which gets us to the ultimate goal of building up your database and expanding your sphere of influence in the process. But it doesn't have to be overwhelming. It doesn't have to be as scary as we make it out to be. A lot of us cling to social because this is one of those things that it's real time. It's in your face. And I always say it's easy to make a great first impression on social because you're putting your pretty pictures up. It's real easy to walk up to Lori and be introduced to her at a Catholic Family Charities event and stumble on my words and not know about what football game she's talking about and have that awkward conversation. It's easy for those things to happen. It's just a matter of being able to recover from those. It's a matter of being able to laugh it off, you know. And it takes practice, it takes time. And remember, always, people are so forgiving because everyone's kind of nervous about this stuff. It's not that anyone's perfect at it. But if you put in your effort, if you know the audience, if you understand the cause, they will respect you for being there, and you'll be able to make some connections as a result of that. The question, of course, is why it matters. And as I always say, it always comes down to what is the end goal? And the end goal is to build connections with people who build your database, whether they're potential clients or they're people who can help you in your real estate business or in your personal life down the road. But I think even more importantly than that, the art of conversation in these scenarios is about putting people at ease. And when you do that, you actually build friendships in the process. People may not ever be so close to you that they're going to come sing at your funeral, but they're going to appreciate the fact that you were disarming, you were honest, you weren't phony with them, and you're able to build up that opportunity to where you're, if nothing else, you're a friendly memory and a name that when they see your advertising, they connect you with something positive. And that's huge. That's very important for us. At the same time, as you're at these events, whether they're a church event or whatever, you eventually get to a point where you're taking on that other side of the role. And so again, if you've got a new person with you, be excited about that. Do your best to help them make a connection along the way. And do what I call it, or what Leo calls, never the naked introduction. You never just say, Antonio, this is Julie. You guys will really like each other because I know you're both interested in real estate. And then you're off. You really have to spend a few minutes and connect people, and then let that conversation morph. Pardon me, I just need to, I'll be right back. You don't have to come back. These are networking events. We're lying to each other all the time, right? Like, I'll be right back. Never. Just help people kind of get started with that and then be able to disappear. That's part of the art of that. I think if you do that and you make that impression on somebody, you make a better impression than if you simply are at home at night and you click a like or a heart on their post. People might see it, respect it, think about it for 2 seconds. But this goes back to,
But the odds are they're not even going to see that you.
Right. I mean, this is just real time, face to face. It means more to people. Again, when you're at any event like this, it's important that people recognize that you're sharing a common interest with them. You don't have to build some sort of a best buddy scenario, but they recognize you're at an event that is celebrating the Humane Society or celebrating Junior League or whatever it is. That gives them a level of trust that is probably going to surpass anything we could really come up with otherwise. So I always think it's fun, and I know we're on a short time frame, but in the interest of everyone being honest with each other, does anyone have any great story about an awkward instance when you go to shake someone's hand for the first time and it doesn't go well? Has anyone been scarred by an event like this? Oh,
I'm sure multiple times.
well, no, that's fine.
None
It
that-
doesn't have to be real estate. That's just the idea. Like, you're out there. It's for anything like that. First impression.
Sort of, yeah. That drunk guy.
Well, there's that.
That was.
And these things, the more you do them, the more you're out there and navigating. The art of disappearing can become as important as the art of the introduction. Obviously.
Really, really bad one.
Yeah.
At the Y. I was at the Y. I was in the locker room with a bunch of ladies that are in a lot of my water classes. I had no pants on. And that's the appropriate time she decides to introduce me to another person who also doesn't have pants on. And I was like,
Some people
find
don't care.
any other time. No, and the 80-year-olds in the locker room at the YMCA are definitely among those people.
So you
I'm
didn't
like,
have
no.
a card on you?
Oh no! I was like, I don't feel like my best impression right now either. I was like, this. You know what? This first impression is probably the most exposed I'll ever be
exactly.
for a first impression ever.
Exactly.
Did you shake her hand? I'm just curious.
You'd hope so.
I think so. I think I did.
I mean, what else do you do?
I have another good one that should not be on camera.
Well, the only reason I ask, it's kind of funny because I think so many of us have these experiences where something goes horribly right. Most of mine are literally because I'm in the middle of a sentence trying to talk to someone else and I'm having two conversations and it just gets muddled. And you think later, wow, they must really think you don't have any clue what's going on. And there are, some ways you can dig your way out of that over time. But the idea, again, that you're trying, and people are so forgiving, people are so gracious, and God forbid if they aren't, you don't want them as a client anyway. So just focus on that is my advice. I think of this, as far as this conversation, primarily with newer realtors. The face-to-face is so important with building up the contacts and whatnot, and we're all out doing our best as far as walking neighborhoods before open houses or making connections in any way, shape, or form we can. But I really think about all the different events that go on. Yakima is such a huge nonprofit community. There are so many different events that happen here, and so many of us feel like our social
Nonprofit
life.
fair this month.
Yeah, exactly. Our social life is consisting of nothing other than going to auctions or meet and greets and those sorts of things. And that's not all bad because they all serve a purpose, and it's actually good for us. We go in phases where we kind of get burnt out, so we don't do so many, and then all of a sudden we'll be involved in them again. And it's great when you're out and about doing it. You feel good about, I reconnected with somebody that I met a couple of years ago, and you have that nice, constant reminder of how important that is. But it's easy to kind of fall out of that. But there are so many events out there, and it isn't all just nonprofit, but you've got church, you've got chamber, you've got PTA and kids sporting events, and even the realtor world. I mean, I really am a big believer that we can gain as much out of running into other realtors on Realtor Tour, just in terms of making connections with people that we will undoubtedly eventually do a cross transaction with. We can gain as much out of that as we do just by talking to someone that we run into at the grocery store or at a nonprofit event. There's a lot of benefit there. Anytime you have any history with somebody, it's way more difficult for them to ignore you. I mean, if we've talked on tour and we've had a good chit chat about a house somewhere along the way, I'm way more likely to not let it go a day or two before I get back to them about a random question about a listing, because I don't want to look stupid, right? We're always in tune to keeping on top of that kind of stuff. And it goes on all around us. I mean, literally, I can't tell you how many times I am in a random situation and I'm like, wow, I wasn't even prepared for the networking opportunity that this is. I mean, Dawn's birthday party, wow,
Right.
I picked up all sorts of leads.
Birthday party.
I was just gonna say,
Let's not
wait,
bring up my
what?
birthday,
I wasn't
shall we not?
invited.
Yeah.
The big one, that's
This month? Get my calendar.
30. Yes, 30.
But that's one of those things to be thinking about, and I don't know if as you're going through it, I know a lot of people don't want to talk about their groups and their spheres in front of different organizations that might be somebody you're afraid someone's going to poach or steal, and I don't think that really happens too much in our office because there's enough business to go around for everybody. But there are so many opportunities, and I'm just imagining that there's got to be some CW alumni events or something that happen here where there's got to be good connections for people to make.
And don't do anything you wouldn't do otherwise.
Amen.
Don't do anything just for the
Amen.
purpose of getting business. Do something that you're
People
genuinely
smell
interested in.
that a mile
They know
away.
you're phony.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they
They
can
know you're
smell
phony.
that a mile away. I've
Yep.
seen that a million times. I would much rather people only pick one nonprofit or project that they're passionate about than go to everything just for the sake of going to it. But if you do, and I mean, Robin and I have been in a position where we've turned down a lot of invitations over the years because it's a cause or it's a cause primarily that is just not something that we're behind.
Mhm.
And it's not to say that it's not a good or worthy cause, but it isn't our passion. And you can get overextended really quickly,
Yeah,
so
prioritize.
definitely keep that in mind. It's a very, very good point, because that shallow level is just obvious for people so quickly.
And then it becomes disingenuous too, because if you spread yourself too thin and you stop helping with one of the organizations, they're like, oh, well, Corey came to this event, 2-3 times, and now she's part of our organization, but is she actually actively engaged? Is she actually
Contributing.
care? Is she contributing adequately? That kind of thing, and then they start to doubt you for those
Yeah.
reasons. Or did they just join the board so they could be the realtor on the board?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. We, for years, had a kind of a joke. It was a horrible tongue-in-cheek joke about, and there was nobody at my church that sold Tupperware, but there was this joke about you don't do business at church because you don't want to be the one who looks like you're there selling Tupperware in the lobby, But it's that kind of a mentality, and that's what I've always kind of gone back to compare that to. You have those levels of what's appropriate and what isn't. You can attend everything as a supporter and not have that be disingenuous.
Yes.
But it's that level of if you're
Gonna be on the board or on a
obligating
committee
yourself to
or-
anything
yeah.
and you're not following through, then of course that just reeks of bad business behavior. But anyway, there are so many opportunities here, and there are regional opportunities that come up. So obviously I encourage you as you go about your daily business to think about those, really think about those groups. And maybe you don't, I wouldn't even say, don't take the whole mailing list and throw it on your database, because that also can come off really, really inappropriately in some instances. But as you meet people through certain things, do not hesitate to put them on your database. Do not hesitate to reach out to them later and connect with them. That's one of the things I talked about at the very end, but don't ever feel awkward about that. Everyone understands we're meeting people, we're all in this together, and that does not come across the wrong way. So when you're there, and we talked about how to navigate a little bit, the idea of being disarming is kind of important. I think using the business card is still very important as far as trading cards with people, because so many people are not that great at introductions, and so many people are a little shy, and so maybe you might get Abby's card, but maybe I don't realize that she works at Keller Williams. Maybe I think that she was talking to somebody who works at one of the title companies, so I just assumed she works at First American or something. So having that card thing is still really, really big. And this, again, back to the politician mindset, at the end of the night when you sit down and you're really talking about where were you, who were you talking to, what is the outcome, picture it just like a business. You're sitting down, lay them out. Maybe there's only 2 or 3, maybe there's 15, depending on the kind of event you went to. But think about it as far as who did I talk to? What did I talk about? Make the notes, make it intentional. Either send the note card or email follow-up, or make the phone call to follow up. People appreciate that. I have a card sitting on my desk right now from a lender here in town who I love, who I hardly ever do business with, but she was at the installation banquet and she took the time to send me a note. And what does Gary Keller say in Ignite? Thank you for Ignite, right? Every
Which
time
one?
you have to do all the note cards and,
Yep.
and just reaching
10.
out to people.
10 a week.
I mean, we all get email, we all get all that stuff. That sort of personal connection as a follow-up from a face-to-face conversation. Why is that still sitting on my desk, whereas the other junk mail I received is in the garbage already? You know, it means something. You gotta remember to do it. You have to make that a priority.
And I would add something to that, as you're saying, make it a priority. It should be something that you goal set to, and you have a reminder in your calendar once a week to do. So as you're collecting business cards throughout the week and you're kind of setting them all in the same place or whatever, once a week you should have a task in your calendar that says enter new people into my database that I've collected throughout the week, and send them thank you cards. That should be a time blocked thing. And you should time block things like networking. Like, I need to make sure I'm at least meeting new people, you know, this many times a month or this many times a week. And every Monday it comes up on my calendar, schedule a networking event or a recruiting event, one or the other. And so it's time blocked. I have to make sure I do it. Whether it's just stopping by the Chamber of Commerce in the morning or whatever it may be. It can be different for everyone, but.
If it's time blocked,
Impact.
it's more likely to happen, of course.
Yes.
There are so many of those where you have a random conversation with someone you just met, and it's a walk away where you're thinking, geez, I'd really love to sit down with them and pick their brain about X, Y, and Z. And so if Tuesday the next week on your calendar it says, call them, just touch base, and you follow up, and you set a coffee date, you know, people jump all over that. They're there for the same reasons we are. You know, they want to get connected and meet people and have those opportunities as well. So it goes a long way. It's
good for you.
It's a thing that can get forgotten so quickly if we don't have it time blocked. If you're only getting 1 or 2 cards a day or a week, it's not that hard to time block or just do it. But if you're getting a bunch, then yeah, you really have to kind of hone it in. And I will say, same thing, even though this starts out as kind of a follow-up on the social, you know, obviously be intentional about who you're friending.
Yes.
You know, I've hit that point in my life where I don't want another Facebook friend. I just hate the amount of time I have to spend on social
That's why you
media.
haven't accepted my friend request?
No, I'm sure that's just pending. Like, you know, really, we all hit that point where it's like, this is overwhelming, it's not what I want to do right now, and yet it isn't any big deal. There's no reason not to. It's like, it is still a very critical part of my business plan. I need to be as disciplined about that as I am with sending note cards and following up with people. And after you've walked away from somebody, it's amazing to me. I was sitting next to a guy, this is last summer, at Rotary downtown, and I know who he is. We've really never met. He's the son-in-law of a gal my wife knows at Yakima, long story circuitous. But just because we sat by each other for an hour, I immediately have that friend suggestion from someone I've never emailed or talked to before in my life. It's like, they know, they're listening.
They do.
Thank you, Mark. It's like, of course, yes, this is your chance. They're even telling you, make that connection, you know, follow up with it. You know, it's all part of the overall
After every
thing.
buyer consultation, I get you know this person,
Yeah,
you should do
yeah.
this, and I'm like, I don't know if we're there yet.
Maybe
Don't
not
know
yet,
if we're there yet.
But, you know,
I just met you, call me maybe.
who's to say that doesn't go on your list of think about?
Yeah.
Revisit that next week. You know, put the reminder on your calendar so you're thinking in terms of how do you really make sure that works. And I don't know, do you all have personal and professional Facebook pages? Is anybody doing Instagram real estate? work here?
Not yet.
Are you?
It's not really working for me, but
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
like, I
Well,
have
you're
one.
there. You're there. That's
That's
important.
my next step. Instagram.
I know. I have not done it either. I feel like Facebook is the new Yellow Pages, and so you kind of have to be there, even though I'm not great at it or consistent with it. But I really do admire a lot of the realtors that I know from around the state. I'm on the state board of realtors, so I meet people from every community in the state of Washington who are doing this. And some of them are so young and so savvy and so excited. And they're from I-5 corridor communities where everyone's a little more in tune to it than we are in Yakima. And I look at that and I think, yeah, someday I can do that. But for now, I'm gonna do this face to face. It's all a mixture. It all has to be connected. It all has to be one and
And
the same.
choose what you want to be intentional about and go with it all the way. Not everybody has to make the same thing
Correct.
a priority.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You'll
That's
find
a good
people who
point.
will find something and capitalize on it, and it will not be in any way, shape, or form something that the next person will do. And that's okay. Totally.
Yeah, there's people here in the office who make way more money than God and who've never had a business Facebook page.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny, because every now and then you talk to somebody who doesn't, and yet they'll have a client who will ask a question about, well, are we on Facebook? And they're like, no, and here's why. Or it's, no, I guess I'll go start a Facebook page. You know,
And then they never
And
do
then they
anything
never
with
do
it.
it,
It just
yeah,
sits there with
yeah.
the same 40-year-old headshot that
Yeah.
they've had on their business cards.
Wow.
there are. I follow a couple people. There's a couple guys over in the Bellevue market that are really good at that, and they are fully invested in I-5 corridor millennial first-time home buyers.
I was gonna say, that's like a age demographic.
It is,
Yeah.
totally. And it's one of those things where, you know, in my particular business, I'm attracting a demographic, or I'm trying to attract a demographic that is still heavily involved in print advertising. So there are a lot of print things that are, I think, more expensive than I want to be spending, but I have to be there because that's where my people are looking.
100%.
There are a lot of people like this. I'll show you some of these folks over there.
Yeah.
Just killer fun people, and you know, they live on their phone. That's their mindset. But they're able to take those people that they're picking up as a lead. A lot of it is open house traffic driven, where you know, build up a chance to meet people in person. They're then taking those people with face-to-face conversations and turning them actually into a client.
Gotcha.
And it's cheap, it's easy, it takes time, and you have to be intentional with it like everything else, but it works for them. And there's no reason that doesn't work here too. I know there are people that do a lot of
Absolutely.
social stuff here that
Yeah.
I'm not even aware of, so it's definitely all handed.
And you have a good person behind you because Caitlin's very good at Instagram marketing.
She is,
She's
yes.
very good at
She
that.
is.
His
She
girlfriend
is.
Caitlin's in Rotaract with me, and I've seen the
Awesome.
marketing that she's done for some of the breweries and stuff around town.
Yeah.
She does a really great job.
Yeah, she does a good job on social
Yeah.
media. But just like the reason I asked about Instagram was the age demographic, because like with football recruiting, we don't do Facebook because there's no high school kids that are on Facebook.
Correct, yeah.
And so like the young kids are all on Instagram and Twitter.
Mhm.
And so
Us
that's
old
where we
people
go. And so
on
I,
Facebook.
well, it's
I know.
like, well, the older demographic is on Facebook, so I
Yeah.
would think Facebook would make more sense for
God,
home
I
buyers
can't believe I'm in the
because
older
I'm not
demographic.
my house until that age.
And actually, in some ways, it's better as you're attracting listings for home sellers,
Okay.
because you're thinking in terms of really older people who are
Right.
really invested in Facebook, and they might be selling
Did you
their
just say
second or
the
third home.
Facebook? You
The
were
Facebook.
totally in tune with
I-
your age demographic.
I do that on purpose. I always refer to it as the Facebook and the
That's just
Instagram,
perfect.
or the Exchangeagram, because that's my favorite movie. And it makes it, again, back to disarming, it makes people realize that I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to that kind of stuff. So they don't expect a lot from me out of it. I have people that help me with that, so.
You've got 10 minutes, just so you know.
Thank you. We're wrapping this baby up. It's a very good point. If you think about where people are at, and I mean, I remember when I first got on Facebook, and it was all of us young people. We're 15 years older now than we were back then, so it all changes. I don't know what TikTok is, but
Right.
people
Yeah.
tell me that on the internet, it's a big deal.
Oh my gosh,
So-
you will not believe what all the
All
old
this,
people are doing on
right?
TikTok. The bold Facebook page
Oh.
has just gotten full of like
What is
40-year-olds on
TikTok?
TikTok
Some videos.
and doing
Is
these
it like
things with
Vine?
realtors, and I'm like,
I think
honey,
that's
They got rid of
honey.
Yeah.
I think it's like a
You role playing
You
or
have to
something.
be aware of your audience, and yes, and it is one of those things that as people age, they get to a different point in their life as far as purchasing or possibly selling, And so you really do have to think about where do you spend your time and your advertising dollars if you're trying to reach certain demographics. So
Boy, I'm 32. I'll be 32 in a week, and all my friends. I know that sounds sorry.
You don't say that when you get to 50.
But
Unless you look
I-
like
I hope
J-Lo.
I will be actually. I hope I'm proud of it. But
Right.
I just did, so.
I mean, like, all my friends have Facebook, and a lot of them are at
Or
the age
exactly
now
what
where they're
she
trying to
wore.
buy houses. And my sister is 10 years younger than me. She's in college. None of her friends have Facebook.
Correct.
None of them.
yeah,
Like, that's a totally foreign concept to them.
yeah.
My kids laugh
So I
at
would
me.
think, like, if you're gonna work the social media aspect, you'd want to be in tune with like what's actually happening on social media, right? Which
Correct.
is not always an easy thing to do.
It is.
Because it
Because
changes
again, you have
constantly,
it
so-
changes
Right.
constantly. And you
Yeah.
have
Find
to be
your
aware of
audience.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, find your target, your ideal client,
Exactly.
and target that
Yeah.
one.
Right.
Because like my ideal client is more Facebook because it's more my age, like young
Yeah.
investors, young professionals is kind of more of what I like to work with and I like to try to
Mhm.
target. So Facebook tends to be a little bit more
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
area. Thank God, because I don't want to learn another thing.
Well, and there is a hugely untapped world in LinkedIn in the Yakima Valley.
Oh, I love
watch,
LinkedIn.
I watch LinkedIn. I've always said like, when
You
can I
have
cancel
LinkedIn?
my LinkedIn
No.
account?
Get a
It's like,
LinkedIn.
why am I
LinkedIn's
there?
a
Because I'm
great
not
way
using it
to-
yet. I am using it because
professional
I'm
level.
Professionals.
I'm watching what's happening.
Right.
I might not be engaging.
You can see when
with
people
it.
change
like
jobs
the,
or when they're
right.
moving
professional
somewhere.
Yeah.
version of Facebook.
You know, there's a lot of
LinkedIn.
those
Okay.
those
People
types of
Talking about how you're
niches
working
that are
with
reaching
children.
people at different points in time in
And
their
that can
lives.
still be
Running your
valuable
business.
information for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm gonna have
totally.
to make one of them.
The
Yeah.
the overall idea, if you're really doing this as a big strategy, is that you have to be at least aware of everything, whether you're heavily invested in any of these areas or not. You know, your business model, you know, will determine how that kind of plays out. But you have to be able to use any of those things at your disposal to create those first time opportunities, to create those first impressions, and to create the face-to-face contact, because that's how you build trust with people, and that's how you get them into your car to look at houses or into the office to list.
I knew it was
with
gonna
their
go.
house.
The house on Crestfield's
Is
officially
sold.
sold.
I knew
It's
it would
gone?
be. I
It's
sent that
gone.
message this morning to Lynette. I said,
Yeah.
Well,
I don't need an open
I
house.
think it's
it'll be
bad
gone
because it
before
is
then.
loaded with termites.
You can do it if you would like.
Is that a violation
still
of some
being
sort of
recorded.
Okay, sorry.
No,
Lynette.
I need to meet with a client to show them houses then.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, final
Does
thoughts
anybody
from
have
Lynn.
any questions? Anybody? Are you guys comfortable being dropped off at a random nonprofit event where you have to go work the room for 30 minutes?
If I have a
or-
partner,
yeah,
I
the
like
buddy
to work with a
system?
buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't do so well by myself.
I'm amazed, and I will tell you, I think the buddy system is so valuable. I'm amazed, especially at realtor events, when we go to our quarterly luncheons or whichever event we go to, we cluster up and we sit with ourselves all the time, and that's not why we're there. I know, right? Here's the topic. The topic is go meet people, right? And especially in our world with all the title reps, all the people in the back office in the title companies, and all the people at the lenders and their support staff, they know who you are because our pictures are out in little books. They see our pictures, they've written them, and we're their targets for business, right? So they know who we are. We don't necessarily know who they are. And if you get out there and make that connection with the people inside your own industry, you're way better off. I meet people to this day that I have seen their names on emails for 10 years, and I've never been able to put a face to that name.
Absolutely.
We have to be more intentional about that in our own industry as well. And we used to, back in the dark ages, we used to do weekly MLS breakfast meetings, and we had monthly luncheons, and we saw each other all the time. And now, unless you're bumping into someone on tour, or maybe dropping off keys somewhere, you hardly ever see people in person. So those are really big opportunities. So many of the people in this industry turn over that a lot of those people in title and in lending, if they do leave the industry for some reason, they will look back on you and remember you fondly, and they will be inclined to use you or at least trust you down the road if you've made that effort with them. So.
I do have one request. Can you speak a little bit to how to handle situations you may not be prepared for, or maybe for people who aren't as much as extroverted? How do they, make an effort to put themselves out there? How do they handle those situations while still practicing that little bit of self-care?
Sure.
So, good example. because I'm a little more introverted, I have to plan networking
Yeah.
stuff so I can mentally prepare to go to it. Because if I just end up at something that I'm not planning to be at, it is draining.
Yeah.
So,
And
because I know your wife is a famous introvert.
correct, yeah,
So-
she's very methodical about stuff like that.
Mhm.
You know, because she doesn't just run to it or love it and enjoy it
Mhm.
like I do. But for me, it's the same thing. I enjoy it so much, I'm as likely to go to something without being prepared and squander the opportunity just because I'm there to say hi to some people I know and have fun and then head home.
Mhm.
It goes back to that homework thing,
Mhm.
and it does take a little extra time, but I'm telling you, it is so amazing the information you learn from organizations just by a quick Google search, and you're able to find something, even if it's something you don't really understand, and when you're there and you're in that lull of conversation, and now it's just like, well, my punch cup is full, so I can't use that as an excuse, but I could say, Abby, I just saw that you got appointed to, what was it, a VP of membership or something? What is that all about? Tell me about that. Any little opportunity like that for that open door, if you let them start talking, it buys you time, you know,
Build it and they will come.
right?
People like talking about themselves and what they're interested
They
in.
do.
So if
They
you
do.
get them talking about that, then you can
Yeah.
create a rapport
Yeah,
with
the
them.
best conversationalist you'll ever come across is someone who asks you about you, right? You know, like, oh my God, let me tell you all
Yeah.
about me.
Fantastic.
That's where we went wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's I think the biggest thing is just having some homework done in advance. If you really don't know anyone there or anything about it, then go with the buddy, or again, pick the target and let them know up front, I'm really interested in this, I think this is cool, but I don't know anything about y'all. Be vulnerable and people will take care of you. It's cool the way that works.
100% true. 100% true. Great example. I just auditioned and became involved with Warehouse Theater, and
Yeah.
I've gotten 3 leads already from
Yeah.
just being involved in something that I was going to do anyway. That's not
Mhm.
why I went into it. I was just doing it for fun. Gotten 3 leads. And then guess who showed up? It was actually a former Keller Williams agent showed up to start volunteering at the warehouse.
Cool.
Sarah Spolstra. Remember?
Oh,
She was
yeah.
a new agent,
Mhm.
and then she transferred over.
Yeah.
She just got married
Yeah.
and everything, so I was able to reconnect with her, and something I probably wouldn't
Yeah.
have had any other way to do and
Yeah.
unplanned. And so just do things that you would enjoy doing.
You're there,
anyway.
you're surrounded with people who have a like-minded cause,
Mhm.
so you have a built-in something to communicate about and talk about.
And if you're coming from a place of service, people
Yeah.
see that, because one of the things that they most get turned off about when they hear, oh, they're in sales, they're going to try to sell me sometimes. But
Yeah.
if you're coming to them and you're like, hey, I'm here to serve something, and then they find out in your sales, more often than not, you've already disarmed them. Like
Correct.
Ryan was talking about,
Yeah.
they're like, oh, I didn't think salespeople cared about other things
Yeah.
other than themselves and money.
It's true.
So, because people do have that assumption. You get a lot of
Yeah.
people that get turned off right away when they find out you're in sales.
Yeah.
And they're very worried
It's
about
perception,
you.
and
They're
perception
very
is reality.
Yeah.
It is. It
Very
definitely
much.
is something you have to get past with people.
Yeah.
But that's the perfect example of some organization where you're just there for fun and for an outlet, and
Yeah.
it turns into something that,
Completely
benefits
unintentionally,
you in the
and gave a
long run.
referral to one
Yeah.
of our friends that's a CPA.
yeah, right? Yeah.
You know, like
Love that.
and helped her business, which
Mhm.
she appreciates, obviously. So,
Yeah.
any other questions for Ryan?
You guys are awesome.
Good info. Yes, we
Peace
are
out,
exactly
everybody.
at time.
Exactly on time. Thank you, Ryan, so
Nice.
much.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.